Assalamu alaikum. Inshallah, we're going to get started right away. And my apologies to everyone who's there at the majlis that I was not able to be on site today. Please forgive me, but I wanted to make sure that we were able to do the tafsir together in its allotted time. So we'll get started right away. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wa sallallahu ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. نوينا التعلم والتعليم والتذكر والتذكير والنفع والانتفاع والإفادة والاستفادة والحث على التمسك بكتاب الله وسنة رسوله صلى الله عليه وسلم والدعاء إلى الهدى والدلالة على الخير ابتغاء وجه الله ومرضاته وقربه وثوابه سبحانه وتعالى وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. In the name of God, the most compassionate, the most merciful, all praise is due to God, Lord of the worlds, and peace and blessings be upon our Master Muhammad and his noble family, companions, and followers. We intend to learn and to teach, to remind and be reminded, to benefit and be benefited, to improve and be improved, and to encourage holding fast to the book of God and the way of his messenger, and to call unto guidance and to direct towards good, hoping for the countenance of God and his pleasure and his proximity and his reward. And peace and blessings be upon our Master Muhammad and his noble family, companions, and followers. Ameen. So it's a blessing to be with you all again today. And inshallah, we will be discussing a new surah, Surah Al-Shams. And as I'm not in front of you directly, I'm unable to get your feedback in terms of participation in the assignment that we had last week. But I do want to pull up the assignment and read what it was and see how, if for those who do want to participate, you're welcome to send it directly into the WhatsApp group for the class if you have any reflections you'd like to share. Now, the assignment was two parts. It was to try to commit to giving to some kind of charity in a regular way, whether it's feeding a hungry person, helping a homeless person, an orphan, helping a relative in need. And then the second one was the idea of freeing our own necks, right? That came up in the surah, in Surah Al-Balad, which is to pick a bad habit to break this week, such that we are striving against either our own sins or our own faults. And when we are tempted to do the bad habit, to simply recite La hawla wa la quwwata illa billah, and to make dua that Allah satisfies us with something that is better. And we don't have, let me check the Zoom room to see if we have any thoughts here. But if for those who would like to share, you can share some reflections in the chat group that we have for this class, and it's a Telegram group. Or I'm just going to open the page for the majlis on YouTube. You could potentially put in the comments on YouTube if you'd like to do that. Just a second while I check. Okay, so the concept that we had was one, striving against ourselves in terms of the greed for this life, the greed for the love of this world, the attachment that we have, material attachments. But an aspect of it is to be more than just like mentally, if someone says, I try not to be attached. Okay, so one of the, like the proof is in the pudding in the sense that it takes action, it takes being, it takes striving um, to actually detach ourselves spiritually when it comes to the love of the life of this world. And so as the surah, as we took the tafsir of it, this idea of not encouraging donating to good causes and taking care of orphans and whatnot, that a big sort of proof for us on the Day of Judgment is our capacity to give for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to give sadaqah, and especially to the categories of people who are in dire need when Allah has given us plenty. And this is not, and we're not even referring to here when people take what they themselves may be in need of and prefer their brother over themselves or prefer their sister in humanity over themselves. This refers to you have extra, we have excess in our lives. We have an amount of wealth in our lives that is more than what we need, right? And we're taking from that excess something regular to give for categories of people that are in dire need of it. And a level above that is those who actually split what they have equally between themselves and others. So we are not even, venturing into the higher levels of generosity, but just the bare minimum, which Imam Ghazali talks about in terms of giving from our excess and but something regular, because in that regular giving there is it's like a drip on the heart, right? It has an over time it has this purifying effect on us, that it's regular versus a lot all at once. And so that was one of the categories. I know sometimes, by the way, that there are people who will calculate how much it costs over the course of a year to give the amount they wanted every month. And then they give it at the beginning of the year just to make sure that they gave it, because they don't know what will happen next month or what will happen 6 months from now. So if a person did that too, that's an option. It's better than not giving. So, but the what we want to hopefully do, inshallah, we want to build the habit in whatever small steps we can to be a people who give regularly, and especially to categories that we know that are in dire need. So that was the first aspect of this assignment. The second aspect is breaking a habit. And habits are not easy to break. Many times a habit cannot be broken in 7 days. And so, especially a bad habit, if it's a fault, and even more so, obviously, it's even more so important to do if it's a sin. Um, and yet, this is something that there's a lot of reward in the striving that a person encounters in order to break these habits. So, before we, take any reflections from those who might want to share, I did want to read a little bit from Imam Ibn Ajiba's discussion on some concepts that deal with the breaking of bad habits. Now, just a second. I lost my place. Unfortunately, my bookmark was in a different place than I had. Okay, here it is. When we're breaking a bad habit, we're actually calling ourselves to account. There's something that we're doing, and we're trying to make ourselves reach beyond that. So I want to read what Imam Ibn Ajiba says in this regard. He says, Muhasaba, self-reckoning, is to call ourselves to account for wasting our precious moments and breath, the nafas, in other than different sorts of devotions to God. The time for self-reckoning is usually at the end of a day. At the beginning of the day comes the time of setting conditions, al-musharata. This means that we say to ourselves, here is the start of a new day, a day that will bear witness for or against you. So make every effort to fill its hours with what brings you closer to God, for had you died yesterday, you would not have had the chance to achieve the good that might be your salvation today. So The beginning of the day is the intention. It's the shart. It's putting a condition on ourselves to break a particular habit, right? So at the beginning of the day, a person says, "Today, I will not do XYZ, whatever it is. I will refrain from doing XYZ, or I will do this other thing that's good, that is more important, a more important use of my time than this other habit that I have." So they whatever the condition is, they set it at the beginning of the day. At the end of the day, before they go to sleep, they look at themselves and they say, "Did you do it? Were you able to accomplish your task? Were you able to break the habit today?" And so, what's amazing about this idea of muhasaba, the hisab that we take at the end of the day, and the musharata, the shart that we put on ourselves, the condition that we put ourselves in the beginning of the day, is that it is literally one day at a time. We don't break a bad habit all at once, per se. We don't, just because one day we didn't do it doesn't mean it's completely gone. It can be completely gone the very first day we tried, but the idea is our growth literally happens one day at a time. We're taking life one day at a time. We're taking all of our goals, all of our the things that we seek to do in this life as steps of drawing closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We literally take it one day at a time. And there's a narration. It's the last of the 40 hadith of Imam Nawawi that is significant in this regard. So I will pull it up in just a second. Let me share my screen. Hmm. Okay, it's not. Just one second. Okay, alhamdulillah, the screen is shared. When it comes to breaking a bad habit, this hadith is very powerful. On the authority of Anas radiallahu anhu, who said, "I heard the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam say, Allah the Almighty has said, O son of Adam, as long as you invoke me and ask of me, I shall forgive you for what you have done, and I shall not mind. O son of Adam, were your sins to reach the clouds of the sky, and you then asked forgiveness from me, I would forgive you. O son of Adam, were you to come to me with sins nearly as great as the earth, and were you then to face me, ascribing no partner to me, I would bring you forgiveness nearly as great as it too." And this is in narrated in Tirmidhi. This is the last of the 40 hadith of Imam Nawawi. Now, it's a collection of 42 hadiths, so you better believe the 41st and 42nd hadith of Imam Nawawi, he really felt that they needed to be included in his collection because obviously these are the two that are more than the number 40. And he ends his collection with this particular hadith, that we know that he starts the 40 hadith collection dealing with innamal a'malu binniyat, that truly actions are by their intentions. So we start with a good intention, right? We start with setting the condition on ourselves to break the habit. We start with al-musharata, as Ibn Ajiba said. Then we end with muhasaba. We end with asking ourselves, did you succeed or did you not succeed? Now, what's beautiful about this narration is, again, after, at the end of our effort, is always to seek forgiveness from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Whether we succeeded, whether we succeeded in breaking the habit or we didn't succeed in breaking the habit that day, right? Because if you succeed, we ask forgiveness to Allah for our shortcomings and any, anything in the our like deeds or actions that did not, that fell short of what is due to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And um, the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam would seek forgiveness in one narration, it says more than 70 times in a single gathering. So seeking forgiveness, if the Prophet Muhammad SAW is doing that in a single gathering, then what about me and you? And seeking forgiveness for the things we know about, seeking for forgiveness for the things we don't know about, and asking Allah to guide us so that we don't continue to fall into the same things. What's beautiful about this is that uh, it tells us that no matter how many times a person makes a mistake, as long as they're turning back to Allah and they're asking for His forgiveness with hope in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and with a sense of presence in their dua to Him, then they are not actually considered, subhanAllah, they are not actually considered as someone who is persisting in sin. I just want to repeat that. They are not considered someone who is persisting in sin. So, but you're like, but they did the same thing. They didn't break the habit, or they broke it 2 days out of seven, or 3 days out of seven. If a person, what's considered, and this is in the commentary of this hadith, the person who's persisting in the bad habit or persisting in sin is the one who, when they fall into it, they don't ask for forgiveness, and they actually intend to keep doing it. Okay, so subhanAllah, there's a distinction that a person can make the same mistake over and over again, but every time they make that mistake, they ask Allah for forgiveness and genuinely and sincerely for forgiveness and genuinely and sincerely begging Him to help them to never do that again. They don't intend to do it again. They make intention, I will not do this again. And somehow they still fall into it again and again and again. And so long as they're continuously asking for forgiveness every time they fall short, they're not considered. In their hisab, they're not considered as the person who's insisting or persisting in that sin. So two people can have the same bad habit. And one person, even as they're doing it, they're being forgiven and they're being every time they fall. And another person who never seeks forgiveness and simply makes the intention to do it again and again and again, that person will have bad deeds, while the other person who's still doing the same thing will actually be forgiven. So may Allah count us all from those who are forgiven. And what's the difference? What makes one person ask Allah's forgiveness no matter how many times they fall into a bad habit or is because their hope in Allah is greater than their belief of their whatever their mistake is. They don't believe their problem or their shortcoming or their fault or their sin is greater than God's forgiveness. And again, their hope in Allah is stronger. They see Allah's mercy and they have hope in His mercy over the shortcoming. And this is something we all need to maintain. This is the difference between um, succeeding eventually, right? Because there's another narration that the person will ask for forgiveness repeatedly until Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, do what you will, for I have forgiven you. Do what you will, for I have forgiven you. And that's may Allah help us to be of those, again, who seek forgiveness. When we succeed, we seek forgiveness for our shortcomings, in even succeeding. And when we fall short, when we of even the shart that we put on ourselves, the condition that we put on ourselves, to seek forgiveness for um, for falling short and making the intention every time, I will not do this again. Even if the person, in the commentary it says, even if a person does the same thing 7 times in the same day, but every time they sought forgiveness and every time they intended not to return to it, but somehow they still fell into it, they're not considered as the person who persists in that sin. They're still considered, subhanAllah, a person who um, is, turning to God rather than persisting in sin. It's not a, it's persistence requires intention to do it again, and intention to keep doing it, and not seeking forgiveness from God while a person is doing it. So I share that because I think it's important when it comes to the approach to breaking bad habits, is that it's really all about hope. It's really all about, I have more hope in Allah's power to help me change, and His greatness and His mercy to forgive me, right, than I do in the mistakes and shortcomings. The second reflection in this regard is that many times to break a bad habit, it requires structural changes. So, real changes, schedule changes, many things might have to change in order to change a particular habit. And, we won't go into it today, inshallah, when I come in person next week, then maybe we can do that. So, Imam Ibn Ajiba, he also talks about how muhasaba can be done. And he says that this self-reckoning should be done as night approaches and in the time before dawn as well. And you should maintain this practice until the presence of God is established in your soul. When this happens, time will be as one, immersed in the consciousness of God, and there will remain neither reckoner nor blamer. So for as long as the journey lasts, the setting of conditions will come first, self-reckoning last, and vigilance always. But upon arrival, neither the first nor the second remains. So, subhanAllah, this is the path of setting the condition in the morning and, holding yourself accountable at night is just the way we are supposed to live as Muslims. It's actually just how we approach our day with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. In the morning, a person dedicates their day to God, a person seeks to have certain goals of things they want to do for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and things they want to stay away from. But this setting of conditions in the morning and this muhasabah at night says continues and continues to continue until the presence of God is firmly established in the soul. And that is, if that is not a motivation to keep going, then I don't know what is. May Allah grant us all taysir and tawfiq, inshallah, in this regard. And we will now turn to Surah Al-Shams, the surah for this week. And I will pull up the surah for us right now. This is Surah Al-Shams, surah number 91 in the Quran. And Surah Al-Shams means the sun. It's an early Meccan surah that was thought uh, to have been revealed shortly after Surah Al-Qadr. It takes its name from the first oath that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala takes in the surah, which is in the first ayah, وَالشَّمْسِ وَضُحَاهَا, right, by the sun in its morning brightness. The first 10 verses emphasize the physical and spiritual polarity inherent in creation and the power of the Creator over it. The first 8 do so through a series of oaths, and the next two, verses 9 and 10, by reflecting upon the human soul as it is situated between iniquity and purity. So, in this sense, the surah actually follows upon the previous surah that we just finished, Surah Al-Balad, in which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala distinguishes between the two highways, right? وَهَدَيْنَاهُ النَّجْدَيْنِ, right? وَهَدَيْنَاهُ النَّجْدَيْنِ is the two highways, the highway of good and the highway of evil. And those of the left, Ashabul Maymana and, or sorry, that's Ashabul Mash'ama, those of the left, and Ashabul Maymana, those of the right. The last 5 verses focus on the story of the northern Arabian tribe, Thamud, which we have discussed in great detail in previous tafsir classes, as an example of what befalls those who reject God's messengers, disobey them, thus preferring iniquity to purity. That the story of Thamud is discussed here and in other places in the Quran, right? It's actually mentioned in Surah Al-Qamar in verses 23 through 31. It's mentioned in Surah Al-A'raf. Um, it's also mentioned in Surah Hud. Uh, it indicates that it was well known to the Arabs. The story of Thamud, that it's mentioned so many times in the Quran, is an indication that the Arabs knew about it. So now we will start the surah, and I'm hoping, inshallah, to get through the first 10 verses today before Maghrib comes in. So, أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والشمس وضحاها والقمر إذا تلاها والنهار إذا جلاها والليل إذا يغشاها والسماء وما بناها والأرض وما طحاها ونفس وما سواها فألهمها فجورها وتقواها قد أفلح من زكاها وقد خاب من دساها كذبت ثمود بطغواها إذ انبعث أشقاها فقال لهم رسول الله ناقة الله وسقياها فكذبوه فعقروها فدمدم عليهم ربهم بذنبهم فسواها ولا يخاف عقباها. By the sun in its morning brightness, and by the moon as it follows it, by the day as it displays the sun's glory, and by the night as it conceals it, by the sky and how he built it, and by the earth and how he spread it, by the soul and how he formed it, and inspired it to know its own rebelliousness and piety. The one who purifies his soul succeeds, and the one who corrupts it fails. In their arrogant cruelty, the people of Thamud called their messenger a liar. When the most wicked man among them rose against him, the messenger of God said to them, "Leave God's camel to drink." But they called him a liar and hamstrung her. Their Lord destroyed them for their crime and leveled them. He did not hesitate to punish them. These are the verses of Surah Al-Shams. Inshallah, we'll look at the first verse now. By the sun and its morning brightness, right? And you can say that it is, there's a trajectory in the oaths that are made, one after another, where we're starting with like the beatific elements in creation, and then we move towards the majestic. There's different opinions about the gentle about duhaha, like being the gentlest part of the morning, right? The duha, like when we talk about like salat al-duha, right, is the prayer that's done at the duha time. There's different opinions about this being the gentlest, right? The gentlest part of the morning. So this by the sun and its morning brightness is like around this time, around duha time. وَالْقَمَرِ إِذَا تَلَاهَا, and by the moon as it follows it. This can be read as an allusion to the moon's receiving its light from the sun. Imam Ibn Kathir, Al-Qurtubi, and Imam Razi mentioned this. Or it can be the new crescent moon, which at the start of each lunar month is visible above the horizon near where the sun sets and itself sets soon thereafter. Okay, so that's the second opinion. That's dealing with the new crescent moon. And then the third is it can also be seen as an allusion to the differing orbits of the moon and the sun, which can be used to measure the passing of time. So together, when you look at the sun and its morning brightness and the moon, and by the moon as it follows it, there's an imagery of the changing of the night and the day, and the passage of time. And Imam Najibi, he mentions that the sun and its brightness, meaning its brightness when it rises and its power, like the power of the sun is established. And the moon, when it follows it in brightness and light. And that is, he says, in the first half of the month, that the moon succeeds the sun in light. The moon receives its light from the sun. And So the sun is the most bright, but then the moon follows after it, and it has a brightness, but it's not as bright as the sun, right? It receives its brightness from the sun. By the day when disclosing it, right? Or by here it's he translates it as the by the day as it displays the sun's glory, Jallaha, right? So again, getting to the more uh, majestic. Um, and it can be taken as a reference to the sun, right? For the word it, when we say by the day when disclosing it. What does the day disclose? Because here technically it's a ha. Now, in this translation, they translated the word it to mean this it displays the sun's glory. All right. So it gives the interpretation of the word it. But the actual word here, here's the ha, right? The H, sorry, the ha alif. So it's and actually even when I put my mouse over it, it says it displays it. Jallaha means it displays it, right? And what is this word it? One opinion is that it refers to the sun. So the day displays the sun. Or it can also mean the world, because when the day starts and the light is out, you can look around and see the whole world or the earth. It can also be a reference to the darkness, right? Because, and then in which case, the way that it's understood is that by the day when dispersing it, right? Because when the day comes, it disperses the darkness of the night. And he mentions that from a spiritual perspective, and this is mentioned in the Tafsir of Imam Tustari, is that this verse can be read as an allusion to the light of faith extinguishing the darkness of ignorance. So that's kind of a more symbolic, metaphorical, and spiritual understanding. Imam Ibn Ajiba says in this regard, and the day when it displays it means it displays the sun. Again, he agrees with the translation of Masab al-Halim. It displays the sun and makes it apparent to those who see, and that is at the beginning of the day, and its expansion because the sun is completely revealed at that time. So when the sun comes out, right, and because of the presence of the sun, right, we have the day, we experience the day. One of the things that we see in the daytime is the totality of the sun. It's fully revealed, it's fully disclosed. And so this translation, by the day as it displays the sun's glory, would be a translation that's consistent with the tafsir of Imam Ibn Ajiba. The fourth verse, وَاللَّيْلِ إِذَا يَغْشَاهَا, and by the night as it conceals it. He says this verse refers to the night enshrouding the sun, that's mentioned in the tafsir of Imam al-Qurtubi and al-Tabari, or enshrouding the world. Either the night enshrouds the sun so we can no longer see it, or it enshrouds the whole world. From a spiritual perspective, it can be read as an allusion to sins, the persistence in which covers the light of faith. So what we talked about earlier was what's the definition of the person who is persisting in a sin? Is it simply because they did the same sin 7 times in the same day? Is it simply because they do the sin and they don't feel any, remorse for it, right? Or is it that they feel remorse but not all the time? Like, what's the definition of the one who's persisting in sin? And that's an important thing for us to understand. Every time a person sins and they realize their sin and they seek Allah's forgiveness and they make the intention not to do it again, if they do this every single time, and that they catch themselves. There's times when a person doesn't catch themselves, and so in that case they're heedless, but they're not necessarily persisting in sin. It's that they just didn't realize it. But if they realized it and this is what they do, then they're not considered someone who's persisting in sin, even if they do the same sin 7 times in the same day. If a person does a sin and they don't feel any remorse for it, no regret, no sense of I shouldn't have done that, and they feel I'm going to continue doing this. This is just who I am. This is just what I do. I can't do something other than this. Then that's the person who is considered one who persists in sin. So he says, from a spiritual perspective, it can be read as an allusion to sins, the persistence of which covers the light of faith. So if a person treats all their sins like I plan to continue doing them and I will not change, and this is just who I am, right? Then that creates a darkness that covers the light of faith. And that's one of the interpretations, again, in Imam al-Tustari, as it relates to the tafsir of this verse. By the night of sins, and when it conceals it, the light of faith. Again, may Allah make us of those that are not written down, with those who persist in sin. May He make us awake and aware of our shortcomings and mistakes, and may He allow us to seek forgiveness in Him, tawbatan nasuha, right? A sincere repentance that completely wipes it out of our record, every time, and allow us to not return to the things that we are seeking forgiveness for. Imam Ibn Ajiba, he says, and the night when it covers it means the night covers the sun and darkens the horizons. So here he says both the sun itself and the sky, the horizon, as well. وَالسَّمَاءِ وَمَا بَنَاهَا, by the sky and how he built it. Well, I'm going to take these together. By the sky and how he built it. وَالْأَرْضِ وَمَا طَحَاهَا, and by the earth and how he spread it. وَالنَّفْسِ وَمَا سَوَّاهَا, and by the soul and how he formed it. Now these are very interesting to come one after another. The sky, the earth, and the soul. It's like you're starting from the largest thing, right? The sky is something we can't, even when we look at it, we cannot with our eyes understand its largeness. That's how massive it is. The earth, the ground is very similar. But it's obviously smaller than the sky. And then the nafs, the soul, and how he formed it, right? Each individual soul in comparison, right, to all of this. Now, according to some, and this is mentioned in Tafsir Imam al-Razi, according to some, the one who in these three verses is not appropriate, since God uh, is not swearing by himself, right? So rather than, so he doesn't translate it as وَالسَّمَاءِ وَمَا بَنَاهَا, as the word wama is not supposed to be translated in its literal sense, which is mentioned here, and he who. And he says, Imam Razi says, because it's not appropriate, because God does not swear by himself, like in this, in these ayat. Rather, it's how he built it, right? It's not who built it, but how. Now, that's one opinion. Or how I was going to say, and how is the opinion of Mas Abdul Halim. The opinion of Imam al-Razi is actually by the sky in that which, so ma referring to that which, in the place of the one who. So here he would read it as and by the sky and that which he built. And by the sky and that which he built. Okay, does that make sense? And by the earth and that which he spread. Okay, so that would be the different way of interpreting the verse. Also, and this is mentioned in the Tafasir Imam al-Qurtubi, Imam al-Tabari, and Imam al-Razi, that the three verses can be read, it's being established, it's being spread, and it's fashioning. So it can be read in almost a possessive sense, right? So by the sky and its establishment, that can also be seen here. By the earth uh, and its being spread. Just a second. And by the soul and its fashioning. So then it's the act of fashioning or the spreading of the earth or the establishing of the sky, but it's not the one. And the translation that's in the study Quran is it's translates it literally وَالسَّمَاءِ وَمَا بَنَاهَا. Here they translate وَمَا as and the one who. And again, in Imam al-Razi, Qultubi, and Tabari, they give other options for that. Imam al-Ajiba also agrees with this. He mentions it in his tafsir as well. This is also the preferred reading of Imam al-Qurtubi. Now, in verse number 5, right, in Surah Al-Dhariyat, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَالسَّمَاءَ بَنَيْنَاهَا بِأَيْدٍ وَإِنَّا لَمُوسِعُونَ. And the sky we established with might, truly we make vast. And the earth we laid out, right? وَالْأَرْضَ فَرَشْنَاهَا فَنِعْمَ الْمَاهِدُونَ. What excellent spreaders. So verse 6 is taken by some to mean what he created in it, right? What did Allah create inside the earth, rather than it being spread out, and by others to mean how he proportioned it. Here for verse 7, actually, let me mention what Imam Ajiba said. So he says, in the heavens, and he who built it means he who built it, and and what he built, preferring what over who, as we said earlier. Um, And then he mentions about the spreading of the earth, that the earth is spread from every side, in every angle, and every side, the earth is spread out. So, and that's the meaning of dahaha. And then the proportioning of the soul. He says, and the all-wise, the one with dazzling wisdom, who proportioned it and perfected its form, prepared its perfections. And he says the indefinite article for the soul, right? For وَنَفْسٍ وَمَا سَوَّاهَا. Again, he gives two opinions. One is that the indefinite article is referring to the first soul, and that is the soul of Adam alayhi salam. And then the second opinion is that it refers to to all souls, like it's mentioning the singular in reference of the plural. Um, so it's about the one who proportioned all the souls and fashioned it. So that's it can either mean Adam alayhi salam, representative of mankind, the first soul, the first human soul, or the all human souls. And it's also mentioned that it can be in the tafsir Imam Ibn Kathir, it can be a reference to the fitra, that the one who created the soul sound and made it well proportioned, that it was the original primordial nature of the human being. And this is also mentioned in Surah Rum, فأقم وجهك للدين حنيفا فطرة الله التي فطر الناس عليها لا تبديل لخلق الله. Right? Set your face to the religion as a Hanif, right? As someone who worships Allah alone in the primordial nature from God upon which he originated all mankind. So here the soul can be taken again as an allusion to the soul of Adam alayhi salam, or the souls of all human beings. It's also a call to meditate upon the true nature of the human being, right? Since God created man in the most beautiful stature. في أحسن تقويم. That is what mankind is given, and the description of the creation of the human being in the Quran is fi ahsani taqweem. It's in the most beautiful stature. So the creation of the sky, the creation of the earth, and the creation of the human soul, it actually indicates the magnitude of the and the significance of the human soul. And I want that to like for us to sit with that for a while. Because look at all these oaths. Look at all of these oaths. How many oaths are there? There's 8 oaths. The sun and its brightness, the moon as it follows it, the day as it displays the sun glory, the night as it conceals it, the sky and how he built it, the earth and how he spread it, and now the last oath before sort of a not a change of subject, but an elaboration, is the soul, the human soul and how he formed it. Like this is the last of the 8 oaths. Or I believe there's 8 oaths here, or 7 oaths. Now, the Quran talks about different kinds of souls. The soul at peace, النفس المطمئنة, which we've talked about before. It's talked about النفس اللوامة, the soul that holds itself accountable. We started today's lesson in talking about muhasaba, that this is a soul that takes hisab, right? Looks at what it does and says it needs to do better. It needs to and checks itself to see if it's doing the things, following the conditions that it has set for himself or herself. So, and then there's also the soul that commands to evil, right? And so the human soul has great capacity for good, and it has great capacity for evil. And that's why, and that's what sort of like the connection to the previous surah when it says in Surah Al-Balad, وَهَدَيْنَاهُ النَّجْدَيْنِ, guiding them to the 2 paths, the highway of good and the highway of evil, right? The human soul has great capacity, amazing capacity for proximity to God and knowledge of God. And it also has great capacity to disobey and to turn away and to cause all kinds of corruption and ruin in the world. This is the power that exists in the human soul. And now, فَأَلْهَمَهَا فُجُورَهَا وَتَقْوَاهَا. Right? Now here we have 8, 9, and 10 are important verses for us, for everyone. فَأَلْهَمَهَا, and inspired it to know its own rebellion and piety. Right? That the soul understands when it has done something that is good and it has done something that is bad and wrong. This sets the human soul apart from the animal kingdom, right? It sets the human soul apart from, trees and plants and other kinds of wildlife that's alive, but it cannot do good deeds and it cannot do bad deeds. Is that our souls are inspired with good and inspired, to not just with good, but our souls recognize and can know when it is doing something that is good and know when it's doing something that is bad and wrong. So Imam Ibn Ajiba, he says that Allah inspired it with its obedience as well as its disobedience, and he made it understand the ugliness of disobedience and the goodness of obedience. So this is something, again, that's within the fitra, the primordial human nature, is that we can see evil and know that it is evil. When the soul is sound, I should say, because the soul can be corrupted, and we can see good and know that it's good. And that this is something that is through the inspiration of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that the soul has this capacity. If the soul insists on evil while knowing it's evil, eventually it can no longer tell the difference between good and bad, and it sees its evil as being good, right? It justifies its evil as being good, and that's the one who's persisting in evil. They refuse in every way to recognize something that they've done is wrong. Or something even someone else has done is wrong. They turn a blind eye to the ugliness of evil, and so they corrupt their own souls. Versus, right, that's why that we have this narration that says that the weakest of Iman is simply to know in your heart that it is wrong. And that is the weakest of faith. We see something wrong, we're supposed to change it with our hands if we can. If we can't change it with our hands and with our speech, if we can't do that, then in our hearts, at least in our hearts, recognize it's wrong. And that is the lowest of faith. That's the weakest form of faith. But notice that it doesn't say the weakest form of intelligence. It says faith, right? The hadith says faith. That's the weakest of faith. That's the weakest of iman. Because to be able to recognize truth as truth and falsehood as falsehood um, is is from faith itself, is from iman. He says, or it can also be read as, or he made it aware of the ways of wickedness and the ways of piety, and gave it a strength with which it is possible to acquire one of the two matters. Right? So the person is aware of this is the good path and this is another path. And they have awareness and they have capacity and choice to take one path or to take another path. قد أفلح من زكاها. So I want to read this in the translation of this according to how it appears in Arabic. I mean, the English translation here is it captures the meaning, but qad in Arabic, when it's mentioned in the beginning of a sentence, it's like it's an it's an emphasis of something that has occurred in the past. Okay, it's an emphasis qad. Um, it's like saying already, right? Uh, so if we were to translate it, it can also be seen as indeed, like that when in this context, it can be seen as like verily, truly. But if we were to just let me see if okay, here they say indeed for qad. It can mean already also, but we'll go with indeed. Indeed, he succeeds who purifies it. Indeed, he succeeds who purifies it. So the verse starts with the description of success. Indeed, he succeeds. Who purifies it, purifies their soul. So you can see this as an emphasis of indeed or truly, or you can also see this as an emphasis of um, already, already. The one who purifies it has already succeeded. And again, because it's in the past tense, I don't want to say purifies it. The one who succeeded, no. So you could read it as I want to be literal for a reason because I feel that you can experience more of the certainty with which this verse is giving us this message. Like we should have yaqeen in this spiritual principle. So already he succeeded who purified it. Already he succeeded. Or indeed he succeeded who purified it. It's already done. It's a done deal. It's a matter that is a closed thing. And it's the verse is mentioning it in the past tense. Translation comes to us in the present tense because it's like that is the sort of like the essence of the meaning is the one who purifies their soul succeeds, right? But that's not how it sounds in Arabic even. قد أفلح من زكاها. Like indeed they succeeded. They won. They attained to what they sought to attain to for purifying their soul. And this is like a huge emphasis because we had this is coming after 8 oaths, or sorry, 7 oaths and a description. The eighth verse is a description of the sort of of the seventh because it's talking about sort of the merits of the human soul. But the the statement, the one who purifies their soul succeeds, right? Or the he succeeded who purified it. For some, this is understood as what all of these oaths are swearing to. Um, and then for others, it's seen as the verses that come, verse 11, كذبت ثمود بطغواها. Some see that as being what the verses, the earlier oaths are swearing to. And then there's an opinion in Al-Kafiyah that the answer to the oath, to all of the oaths that were previously mentioned, is omitted. And it's omitted because it's giving the meaning that Allah may destroy whoever disbelieves from the Quraysh, just as he destroyed the people of Thamud. So there's three different sort of approaches to understanding what is Allah swearing to. But one of them is that Allah is swearing by all of these things in creation, including the human soul itself, swearing to the success of the soul who is purified, the success of the person who has purified their soul. Right. So this is, may Allah allow us to heed this verse. قَدْ أَفْلَحَ مَنْ زَكَّاهَا. The one who purifies his soul succeeds. It's also reported that when reciting this surah, the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ would stop at this verse, قَدْ أَفْلَحَ مَنْ زَكَّاهَا, and he would supplicate, O God, give my soul its reverence. You are its protector and master and the best to purify it. So this is a place where he would make this dua, O Allah, give my soul its reverence. Give my soul its taqwa, right? And you are its protector and master and the best to purify it, right? And how does Allah purify our souls? By allowing us to be of those who turn to Him in forgiveness, seeking forgiveness, by allowing us to be people who seek to do the acts of obedience that, our souls are created to recognize. He is the one who purifies us when he allows us to be of those who are trying to and striving to stay away from the acts of disobedience, right? So the actual act of striving, the purification process itself is something that there's an effort, there's an aspect of it which is our suluk, our striving, our taking being aware of the choices we have and trying to use them in a way that's pleasing to Allah, and continuously turning back when we fall short. So there's that aspect, and there's the other aspect, which is God granting us success, granting us tawfiq in our efforts, or taysir and ease in our efforts and facilitation. And so they are both there in the path of the one who succeeds in purifying their soul, right? The Prophet ﷺ would stop there and he would actually make dua that Allah purifies the soul. He says, Oh God, give my soul its reverence, its taqwa. You are its protector and master and the best to purify. May Allah purify all our souls, and ameen for this, for my soul, and for yours, for all of ours, inshallah. Imam Ibn Ajiba, he says, well, also just going back, he's, in terms of the soul's capacity to recognize and be inspired with the knowledge of this is evil and this is good. He says, Allah inspired the one who wanted misery, right, with its wickedness, and so it sought it. And he inspired the one who wanted its happiness with its piety, so it sought it. So you could say, how can a soul want its own misery? Meaning it wants to follow a path of like eternal wretchedness. Like there are people who they can see the good and the evil in front of them, and they consciously and knowingly choose the evil path. Right. And so they continue to seek that, and then and that's where they turn. There's another person who sees goodness and continuously strives to attain more and more of it. He also mentions that the person who has purified their soul has achieved everything they desire and has been saved from every harm. That's what the word success means, right? They succeed. They have achieved everything they desire and have been saved from every harm, because he who purifies it, reforms it, and makes it pure through faith and obedience. So the purification of the soul, when the soul is purified, the person, again, Imam Ibn Ajiba's words, this person has been saved. And not only that, they've accomplished everything. Because if you have accomplished a pure and sound soul with God, that is the attainment of everything. And then this makes the next verse hit even harder. وَقَدْ خَابَ مَنْ دَسَّاهَا. And again, if we were to use the literal approach, and he already failed who corrupted it. He already failed who corrupted it. Or indeed, he failed who corrupted it, corrupted his own soul. And the one who corrupts it fails. Okay, going back, indeed, he prospers who purifies it, versus, and indeed he fails who obscures it. It's another interesting translation. So these two verses have served as an inspiration for extensive literature in purification of the soul. In Islamic history, this whole concept of tazkiyatun nafs, right? The word zakkaha, purify. So there's the word tazkiyah. It's one whole, you could say, it's 1/3. It's 1/3 of our deen. What do we mean by that? Because in Hadith Jibreel, when the angel Jibreel comes to the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ and he says, "What is Islam?" And he gives him the pillars of Islam. "What is Iman?" He gives him the pillars of Iman. "What is Ihsan?" And he tells him to worship Allah as though you see him, and even though you don't see him, knowing that he sees you. That description is the quality of the purified heart. That description of ihsan is the purified heart. And so tazkiyah, this aspect of worshiping God in that way, uh, requires a path of spiritual purification. And this aspect is then 1/3 of, this was Jibril who came to teach you your religion. So our religion has the do's and don'ts, and it has what we believe, and it also has the path of spiritual purification. And there's much literature about this, as is to be expected, because it is 1/3. It is 1/3 of how we understand our deen. So these two verses have served as an inspiration for extensive literature in Tazkiyat al-Nafs, which some argue is the entire purpose of the Quran. Most take verse 9 to be the beginning of the answer, and to the oaths taken from verses 1 through 7. And so that's in the Tafsir Imam al-Baghawi and also Imam al-Shawkani. The text speaks of those who cleanse the soul of lowly and despicable character traits, and conversely, those who dull the soul by neglecting it through heedlessness and disobedience. Ibn Kathir mentions this. In Ash'ari Aqidah also, according to some of the earliest commentators, these two verses could also be read with God as the subject, meaning he whose soul God purifies has indeed prospered, and he whose soul God obscures has indeed failed. Okay, and that is significant. That's significant because there's no way to have it purified. Again, we say that we are a deen that believes in both free will and predestination at the same time. I have free will and I have accountability, and I also believe that God decrees everything. So it can be read both ways. The one who purifies his soul succeeds, or he succeeds whose soul is purified by God. And he fails whose soul was corrupted or allowed to be corrupted by God. Yeah, the Quran puts emphasis in our choices. The Quran puts emphasis in what we do. The Quran command, like that's what we need to worry about, is what am I doing with the freedom that God has given me, with the choices Allah has given me. So Allah mentions in the Quran, whosoever purifies himself only for his own soul, like it's only for his own good. And yet he also says, you do not will, but what Allah wills. Right? Or rather, it is God who purifies whomsoever he wills. So there is this duality between Allah purifying us and us seeking to purify ourselves. In the study of Quran, it mentions a really beautiful point, which is we should notice that there is a subtle reciprocity in every step one takes towards God. There is a subtle reciprocity in every step one takes towards God. when we're taking the step towards Him, there's a reciprocity, there's something that happens after. But indeed, there's something that came before we even took the step towards Him, which is He inspired us to take that step towards Him. Imam az-Zamakhshari also mentions um, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, truly God alters not what is in a people until they alter what is in themselves. The literal meaning of purify, zakka, is to grow. And according to most, the literal meaning of obscure, dassa, is to bury, right? So indeed, he fails who buries it. And the reason why I really like the word, that knowing that literal translation for bury, is that truth is something that is so strongly um, inspired in the fitra that in order to follow evil, you have to bury the truth with that your own nature is calling you towards, right? So the truth of a creator is something that is inside the human soul. It exists within the human soul. So for someone to say God does not exist, they had to bury the sound of their own soul telling them God does exist. So that I really love how the root of the word the saha is actually to bury. And the nafs, when it is allowed to do whatever it wants of evil, right, it continues to bury the voice of the ruh, of the spirit which knows God. And so, it's like they say every soul is like a hidden treasure, right? There's with the spirits of every human being already devoted to God. And it's through this world and the tests of this life and choosing disobedience instead of choosing obedience and choosing um like paths of evil that we bury, and it's like putting a bunch of rocks and trash over, burying, literally, quite literally burying the voice of the ruh, which is already devoted to God until we can no longer hear it anymore. And so, oftentimes, they say like a true sheikh, someone who, or a true guide, is someone who helps the one who's seeking God to pull out these rocks, right? Like, let's say, imagine it's like a treasure buried at the bottom of a well, and the rocks and trash are piled over it. So the true sheikh helps the person to pull out the rocks one at a time, one at a time, one at a time, until the treasure that is inside of them is completely uncovered and is able to shine and be out, right? Is it be seen and witnessed and exist openly instead of being buried by all the dirt and the rocks and trash. So the soul is like that. It's we corrupt it, like the description of corrupting the soul and burying the soul, um, as coming from the same root word, is very apt. The verse 10 also emphasizes that those whose souls are buried, they're buried not just by like what I just described in terms of the rocks and the trash is a metaphor, and it's a metaphor for reprehensible acts, right? Acts of disobedience or acts of that are disliked, not just disliked in a reprehensible manner by God, meaning it's a forbidden thing. Um, and may Allah protect us from becoming people who don't see evil as evil and so persist in it, and don't see good as good and so abandon it. And again, the soul that's intact sees good as good and strives to do it, and sees evil as evil and strives to stay away from it. And I think Maghrib has arrived, and I don't want to delay everyone. And so, inshallah, we will stop here. The assignment for this week is actually to continue the assignment for last week. And because which was this aspect of finding the bad habit, identifying the bad habit. It could be the same one as last week, or it could be a new one, but it's something that each day we're going to make a condition, a shart for ourselves, what we want to not do or what we want to do. And then at nighttime to look at ourselves and see if we were able to succeed or not. And if we fall short, to sincerely seek forgiveness, um, genuinely seek forgiveness from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and to make dua to Allah to help us to not return to it again. And again, the one who does this is not considered someone who persists in sin, even if they did the same thing 7 times a day. Look at the mercy of God. Um, we have to take advantage of the gift that we're given, to ask forgiveness from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and to choose hope in His capacity to transform us, and hope in His mercy over our own issues, whatever, however big they may seem in our eyes. They are not greater than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so we'll close, inshallah. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. اللهم وفقنا لما تحبه وترضى، واجعلنا من عبيدك سعداء، وأمتنا على كلمة الهدى. علمنا ما ينفعنا، ووفقنا للعمل بما علمتنا به، واجعل ما نحن فيه خالصا مخلصا لوجهك الكريم. آمين يا رب العالمين. اللهم اجعل تجمعنا هذا تجمعا مرحوما، وتفرقنا بعده تفرقا معصوما، لا شقيا منا ولا محروما. وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. O God, give us success to attain what you love and are pleased with. Make us amongst your felicitous servants. Allow us to die on the statement of guidance. Teach us what will benefit us, and give us the success to act upon what you have taught us. Make that in which we are engaged pure and devoted to your noble face. Ameen, O Lord of the worlds. O God, make this gathering of ours a gathering enveloped in mercy, and our parting thereafter a parting of our sins purged and forgiven. Not one of us wretched or deprived, and peace and blessings be upon our Master Muhammad and upon his noble family, companions, and followers. Ameen. Barakallahu fikum. Looking forward to